Imagine a society where the government provides for a significant portion of its people. This is not a hypothetical scenario. This is the reality in the United States. Over 30% of the American workforce relies directly on government spending. This means that millions of jobs, from teachers to construction workers, are funded by the government. This system of support has become deeply ingrained in the fabric of American society. For generations, Americans have come to rely on this safety net. It has provided a sense of security and stability for millions. However, what happens when this seemingly unshakable foundation begins to crack? What happens when the very system designed to support the nation starts to crumble under its own weight? The warning signs are all around us. The national debt is skyrocketing, and the government continues to spend beyond its means. The Federal Reserve, in an attempt to stimulate the economy, has resorted to printing trillions of dollars, a strategy that history has shown to be a dangerous gamble. This essay will delve into the heart of this impending crisis. We will examine the role of big government in the American economy and how its overreach has created a system teetering on the edge of collapse. To understand the potential for collapse, we must first understand the role the U.S. government has played in the nation's economy. Since its inception, the U.S. government has been a key player in shaping economic outcomes. From regulating industries to funding infrastructure projects, the government has always had a hand in guiding the nation's economic course. For over 250 years, this intervention has often been credited with driving economic growth. The government's role as a major consumer of goods and services has created a stable demand in the market. This, in turn, has spurred business growth and job creation. Government spending has also played a crucial role in providing a safety net for millions of Americans. Programs like Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment insurance have been lifelines for those facing economic hardship. These programs, while essential for the well-being of millions, are also deeply intertwined with the government's financial stability. The government's role in the economy has evolved over time, but its impact remains undeniable. Whether through direct spending, regulatory policies, or social safety net programs, the government has shaped the economic landscape for generations of Americans. However, this legacy of intervention is now facing its greatest challenge yet. One of the most significant ways the government influences the economy is through its role as an employer. The U.S. government is the largest employer in the country, with millions of citizens working in a wide range of sectors. From teachers and firefighters to scientists and soldiers, government jobs provide essential services and contribute to the nation's workforce. This vast employment network has a ripple effect throughout the economy. Government employees earn salaries, pay taxes, and contribute to consumer spending. This spending, in turn, supports businesses and creates further job opportunities. This cycle of income generation and spending is a key driver of economic activity. The government's role as an employer goes beyond direct employment. Government contracts with private businesses also generate significant economic activity. These contracts, often for infrastructure projects, defense equipment, or research and development, create jobs and stimulate innovation. The government's influence on the job market is undeniable. It provides stability and security for millions of workers and their families. However, this reliance on government employment also raises concerns about the long-term sustainability of this model, particularly as the nation grapples with mounting debt and economic uncertainty. The government's ability to support this system hinges on a critical assumption that its revenue streams will continue to grow at a pace that outpaces its spending. However, this assumption is becoming increasingly fragile. The national debt is at an all-time high, and the government is borrowing heavily to meet its obligations. This unsustainable trajectory has far-reaching implications. As the debt grows, so too does the cost of servicing that debt. Interest payments on the national debt consume a growing portion of the federal budget, crowding out essential investments in areas such as education, infrastructure, and research. Moreover, the government's reliance on borrowing to fund its operations creates a vicious cycle. Borrowing to cover current expenses only pushes the problem further down the road, leading to a larger debt burden for future generations to bear. This intergenerational debt burden raises questions about economic fairness and the long-term health of the nation's finances. The current path is unsustainable. The government's commitments, once seen as ironclad guarantees, are now being called into question as the financial realities of the situation become increasingly clear. This uncertainty casts a long shadow over the future, particularly for younger generations who stand to inherit this mounting debt burden. Nowhere is the tension between government promises and economic realities more apparent than in the looming Social Security crisis. Social Security, a cornerstone of the American social safety net, is facing a demographic and financial time bomb. Established in 1935, Social Security was designed to provide a safety net for retirees and the disabled. The program is funded through payroll taxes collected from current workers. These taxes are then used to pay benefits to current retirees. However, the program is facing a fundamental challenge. The number of retirees is growing faster than the number of workers paying into the system. This demographic shift, driven by longer lifespans and declining birth rates, is putting immense strain on Social Security's finances. According to projections by the Social Security Administration, the program's trust fund is projected to be depleted by 2033. This means that, without significant reforms, Social Security will only be able to pay out a portion of promised benefits to future retirees. The potential consequences of this are staggering. Millions of Americans rely on Social Security for a significant portion of their retirement income. A reduction in benefits would have a devastating impact on their standard of living, potentially pushing many into poverty. This crisis is not limited to Social Security. Medicare, the federal health insurance program for seniors, is facing similar financial challenges due to rising healthcare costs and an aging population. The convergence of these crises poses a significant threat to the well-being of millions of Americans and the stability of the U.S. economy. The government's role in providing for its citizens is being tested like never before. The promises made, often with good intentions, are colliding with the harsh realities of economic limitations. This collision has exposed the fragility of the current system and the urgent need for a sustainable path forward. At the heart of the impending economic crisis lies a practice shrouded in both secrecy and controversy: money printing. The Federal Reserve, America's central bank, has the power to create money out of thin air. While this may sound like a recipe for limitless wealth, the reality is far more complex and potentially disastrous. In times of economic distress, the Federal Reserve often resorts to printing money as a way to stimulate the economy. This newly created money is injected into the financial system, making it easier for businesses to borrow money and for consumers to spend. This increased spending, in theory, can boost economic activity and create jobs. However, this seemingly quick fix comes at a steep price. When the money supply increases at a rate faster than the growth of goods and services in the economy, it leads to inflation. Inflation, simply put, is the decline of purchasing power per unit of currency. As more money chases the same amount of goods, prices rise, eroding the value of each dollar in your pocket. This brings us to the crux of the issue. The Federal Reserve's strategy of money printing is a dangerous gamble, a gamble with the very stability of the U.S. economy. While it may provide short-term relief by creating the illusion of economic growth, the long-term consequences can be devastating, especially for those who are least able to withstand the erosive effects of inflation. The allure of money printing is its ability to create a mirage of prosperity. When the economy is sluggish and businesses are struggling, injecting trillions of dollars into the system can create a temporary sugar rush. Stock markets may soar, businesses may hire, and consumers may feel more confident about spending. This artificial boom, however, is built on a foundation of sand. The underlying problems that cause the economic slowdown in the first place, such as excessive debt, declining productivity, or global economic instability, remain unaddressed. In fact, the excessive money printing often exacerbates these problems by creating new bubbles and distortions in the market. Consider this: when the money supply expands rapidly, it often leads to asset price bubbles. Suddenly, stocks, real estate, and other assets become inflated in value, not because of genuine economic growth, but because there is simply more money chasing these assets. This creates a dangerous illusion of wealth, leading investors and consumers to make decisions based on distorted market signals. This illusion of prosperity cannot last forever. As the saying goes, what goes up must come down. When the asset bubbles inevitably burst, as they always do, the consequences can be catastrophic, leading to market crashes, recessions, and widespread economic hardship. The most insidious aspect of inflation is its ability to silently erode the value of your hard-earned money. Imagine working tirelessly, saving diligently, and planning for the future, only to see the purchasing power of your savings dwindle away year after year. This is the reality for millions of Americans struggling to cope with the consequences of inflation, fueled by excessive money printing. The impact of inflation is felt most acutely by those living on fixed incomes, such as retirees and those receiving government assistance. As prices rise, their fixed incomes buy less and less, making it increasingly difficult to afford basic necessities. They are forced to make impossible choices between paying for food, medicine, or housing. But the erosion of purchasing power extends far beyond those on fixed incomes. Workers may find that their wages, even if they increase, fail to keep pace with the rising cost of living. This leads to a decline in living standards and a sense of frustration as they struggle to make ends meet. The insidious nature of inflation lies in its ability to erode wealth gradually, almost imperceptibly. It is a silent thief that steals the value of your money, your savings, and your future. And the longer the Federal Reserve continues its dangerous game of money printing, the more severe the consequences will be for the American people. Inflation is not merely an abstract economic concept confined to textbooks and academic debates. It is a visceral reality that hits the pocketbooks of every American, shaping their daily lives and long-term financial well-being. The most immediate and tangible impact of inflation is the rising cost of living. From the gas pump to the grocery store, the relentless upward march of prices is eroding the purchasing power of every dollar earned. What once seemed like routine expenses, like filling up a tank of gas or buying a week's worth of groceries, now require a larger chunk of income, leaving families struggling to make ends meet. For many families, the rising cost of housing is the most pressing concern. Whether renting or owning, Americans are facing a housing affordability crisis fueled by a combination of factors, including inflation, low housing supply, and increased demand. Renters are facing year-over-year rent increases that far outpace wage growth, while homeowners are grappling with rising property taxes and the prospect of being priced out of their own homes. This relentless pressure on household budgets creates a sense of financial anxiety and insecurity. Families are forced to make difficult choices, cut back on essential expenses, dip into savings, or take on additional debt just to stay afloat. The rising cost of living is a constant reminder of the eroding value of their hard-earned money and the uncertainty of their financial future. The pernicious nature of inflation lies in its ability to create a vicious cycle that traps individuals, businesses, and the overall economy in a downward spiral. As prices rise, workers demand higher wages to keep pace with the increasing cost of living. Businesses facing higher input costs for raw materials, energy, and labor have no choice but to raise prices on their goods and services to maintain their profit margins. This, in turn, fuels further inflation as consumers are hit with yet another round of price hikes, leading to demands for even higher wages. This wage price spiral is a recipe for economic stagnation. Businesses, squeezed between rising costs and uncertain demand, become hesitant to invest and expand, leading to slower economic growth and job creation. Consumers, facing a constant erosion of their purchasing power, become more cautious with their spending, further dampening economic activity. The inflationary spiral, once set in motion, becomes increasingly difficult to break, creating a climate of economic uncertainty and anxiety. Moreover, inflation can distort investment decisions, leading to a misallocation of resources. When the value of money is constantly eroding, investors are incentivized to seek short-term gains in speculative assets, such as real estate or commodities, rather than making long-term investments in productive enterprises. This can lead to a bubble economy where asset prices become detached from their underlying economic fundamentals, setting the stage for a painful correction when the bubble bursts. Beyond the tangible economic consequences, inflation also takes a toll on the psychological well-being of individuals and the social fabric of society. When the value of money is constantly eroding, it creates a sense of uncertainty and anxiety about the future. People begin to question their long-held assumptions about financial security, retirement planning, and their ability to provide for themselves and their families. The traditional social contract, where hard work and thrift are rewarded with a better life, begins to unravel, leading to a loss of trust in institutions and a sense of disillusionment with the future. This psychological toll can manifest in various ways. Some individuals may become more risk-averse, hoarding cash or making impulsive financial decisions out of fear and uncertainty. Others may become more cynical and distrustful of institutions, leading to social unrest and political instability. The erosion of trust extends beyond the individual level. Inflation can strain relationships between employers and employees as workers feel increasingly undervalued and businesses struggle to balance fair wages with rising costs. It can also create tension between generations as younger generations face a future of diminished economic opportunity and a heavier burden of debt. Beyond its corrosive effects on domestic economies, the practice of excessive money printing has profound and often destabilizing consequences on the global stage. As nations grapple with the fallout of their own inflationary policies, the interconnected nature of the global economy ensures that these economic shockwaves reverberate far beyond their borders. This interconnectedness, while often touted as a sign of progress and cooperation, can quickly morph into a conduit for economic contagion as nations find themselves increasingly vulnerable to the policy decisions of others. This delicate balance of power, underpinned by economic interdependence, becomes increasingly precarious in an environment of rising inflation and currency devaluation. As the purchasing power of major currencies erodes, it can trigger a scramble for scarce resources, ignite trade wars, and exacerbate existing geopolitical tensions. History is replete with examples of economic crises spilling over into international conflict. The Great Depression of the 1930s, for instance, created a fertile ground for extremist ideologies and protectionist policies, ultimately contributing to the outbreak of World War II. The current economic landscape, characterized by unprecedented levels of debt, geopolitical rivalry, and the weaponization of economic interdependence, suggests that the world may be sleepwalking into another era of conflict, fueled in part by the consequences of reckless monetary policies. In a world where economic prowess is inextricably linked to geopolitical influence, the relative strength or weakness of a nation's currency plays a crucial role in shaping its standing on the global stage. A strong and stable currency is not merely a matter of national pride. It is a strategic asset that underpins a nation's ability to project power, secure favorable trade agreements, and attract foreign investment. Conversely, a weak and volatile currency can diminish a nation's standing, erode its credibility in international markets, and make it more susceptible to economic coercion from rivals. The link between economic instability and international conflict is not a novel concept. Throughout history, periods of economic upheaval have often coincided with, and in many cases, precipitated major wars and geopolitical realignments. The Peloponnesian War, a protracted conflict between Athens and Sparta in ancient Greece, was sparked in part by economic competition and Athenian control of vital trade routes. The 30 Years' War, which ravaged Europe in the 17th century, was fueled by a complex interplay of religious tensions, dynastic rivalries, and economic grievances. More recently, the collapse of the global economy in the 1930s, triggered by the Wall Street crash of 1929, created the conditions for the rise of fascism and ultranationalism in Europe and Asia. The economic desperation, social unrest, and political instability of that era provided a fertile ground for demagogues to exploit, promising their populations a return to greatness through military expansion and a rejection of the global order. These historical examples serve as cautionary tales, reminding us of the fragility of peace and the interconnectedness of economic and geopolitical stability. The lessons of history are clear. Economic hardship, particularly when coupled with a sense of grievance and a lack of international cooperation, can create a dangerous breeding ground for conflict and instability. In an era of increasing resource scarcity, driven by factors such as population growth, climate change, and rising consumption patterns, access to vital resources such as water, energy, and minerals is becoming an increasingly important determinant of national security and geopolitical power. As traditional sources of energy such as oil and natural gas become more contested and expensive to extract, nations are increasingly looking to secure alternative sources of energy and raw materials, often in remote and politically unstable regions. This scramble for resources is already playing out in various parts of the world. The melting of Arctic ice caps, for instance, has opened up new shipping routes and access to potentially vast reserves of oil and natural gas, leading to increased competition and military buildup in the region. Similarly, the demand for rare earth minerals, essential for the production of everything from smartphones to electric vehicles, is fueling geopolitical tensions as nations compete for control of these strategic resources. The consequences of excessive money printing, particularly the resulting inflation and currency devaluation, exacerbate these resource tensions by driving up the price of commodities and making it more difficult for nations to afford the resources they need to sustain their economies and maintain social stability. This economic pressure can lead to a zero-sum mentality, where nations view their own security and prosperity as being dependent on denying access to resources to their rivals. The convergence of these economic and geopolitical trends paints a sobering picture of a world adrift, grappling with a confluence of interconnected challenges that threaten to undermine the post-World War II order. The rules-based international system, already under strain from the rise of nationalism, populism, and great power rivalry, is ill-equipped to deal with the complex and multifaceted consequences of a global economic system teetering on the brink. The institutions designed to foster international cooperation and economic stability, such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Trade Organization, are facing a crisis of legitimacy and effectiveness. They are often seen as being beholden to the interests of powerful nations and corporations, rather than serving the needs of the global community as a whole. In this environment of uncertainty and mistrust, the temptation for nations to retreat inward, embrace protectionist policies, and prioritize their own narrow self-interests is strong. However, such a retreat from global engagement would be a grave mistake, exacerbating the very problems it seeks to address and paving the way for a more fragmented, unstable, and conflict-prone world. The challenges facing the world today are complex and interconnected, demanding a coordinated global response that prioritizes cooperation, sustainability, and the equitable distribution of resources. Failure to act decisively and collectively risks unleashing forces that could unravel the fragile fabric of peace and prosperity that has taken generations to build. As we've journeyed through the intricate workings of the U.S. economy, we've uncovered a sobering truth. The very foundation upon which our nation's economic might rests is showing signs of severe strain. The relentless pursuit of growth, fueled by unsustainable levels of government intervention and the illusory elixir of money printing, has created a system teetering on the precipice. The warning signs are no longer whispers on the wind. They are blaring sirens, impossible to ignore. A national debt spiraling into uncharted territory, a looming social security crisis threatening the retirement security of millions, and the insidious erosion of purchasing power through inflation, these are not mere abstract economic indicators. They are harbingers of a potential storm that could reshape the lives of generations to come. The reliance on big government to solve every economic ill, while well-intentioned, has created a dangerous dependency. The social contract, once a source of stability and shared prosperity, is fraying at the edges as the promises made become increasingly difficult to keep. The bill for decades of overspending and financial recklessness is coming due, and the question is, who will bear the brunt of its weight? The first step towards mitigating the risks of an economic collapse is a collective awakening to the gravity of the situation. We must move beyond the partisan bickering and ideological blinders that often cloud rational discourse and confront this challenge with clear eyes and a shared sense of urgency. This is not a time for complacency or resignation. The future of our nation, and indeed the world, hinges on our ability to acknowledge the flaws in our current economic system and to chart a new course, one grounded in sound fiscal policies, sustainable growth, and a renewed commitment to intergenerational responsibility. We must demand transparency and accountability from our elected officials, holding them responsible for making decisions that prioritize the long-term health of our economy over short-term political expediency. We must educate ourselves and future generations about the principles of sound money, responsible spending, and the importance of investing in the productive capacity of our nation. This is not a call to dismantle the social safety net or to abandon those in need. On the contrary, it is a call to strengthen these vital programs by ensuring their long-term sustainability through responsible reforms and a commitment to fiscal discipline. The path forward will not be easy. It will require difficult choices, shared sacrifices, and a willingness to challenge long-held assumptions about the role of government and the nature of economic growth. But the alternative, a future marred by economic instability, social unrest, and diminished opportunities, is too grim to contemplate. We must foster a national conversation about the trade-offs we are willing to make, both as individuals and as a society. Should we prioritize consumption over savings? Should we continue to accumulate debt to fund current spending? Or should we make the difficult choices necessary to balance the budget and invest in the future? Should we rethink our entitlement programs to ensure their long-term viability? These are not easy questions, but they are questions we must grapple with if we are to avert economic disaster and create a more sustainable and equitable future for all. The time for denial is over, and the time for action is now. If you've made it this far and enjoyed the content, we'd love your support to help us grow this channel. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Take care and see you next time.